women have been raped by Eritrean and Ethiopian military men. Because of the ongoing genocide, out of the 6 million population of the Tigray region, 5.2 of them are facing a man-made famine. This is all because the dictator in Ethiopia wants to stay in power illegally and unconstitutionally. We, as a global citizens, have the power to come together and stop the suffering of the innocent people. We are here calling on the US government to impose targeted economic sanctions on Ethiopia and Eritrea, to impose arms embargo so that these genocidal forces do not continue to buy armaments and kill innocent people. You can join our social media movement by using the hashtag Tigray Genocide on Twitter. You can also join our grassroots movement and lobbying efforts by talking to your senators and Congress people and pushing them to impose sanctions on Ethiopia and Eritrea. Sanction Ethiopia!
Sanction Ethiopia!
Sanction Ethiopia!
Sanction Ethiopia!
Sanction Ethiopia!
Sanction Ethiopia!
Isaias to the ICC!
Isaias to the ICC!
Isaias to the ICC!
Isaias to the ICC!
Drop food, not bombs!
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 If I can't hear you, they can't hear you. Who are we? Who are we?
Tagaru!
Who are we?
Tagaru!
What do we want?
Peace!
What do we want?
Peace!
What do we want?
Peace!
What do we want it?
Peace!
What do we want it?
No!
What do we want it?
No!
Who are we?
Tagaru!
Who are we?
Tagaru!
Who are we?
Tagaru!
What do we want?
Peace!
What do we want?
Peace!
What do we want?
Peace!
What do we want it?
No!
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 Stop the Tigray genocide!
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 This is a peaceful protest against the ongoing state-sponsored genocide in Tigray, Ethiopia. For the past 9 months, the government of Ethiopia colluded with the government of Eritrea to bomb, rape, murder, massacre, and annihilate the Tagaru people. Of the 6 million innocent civilians in Tigray, over 90% of the population is in need of emergency humanitarian aid. There's no food, no water, no gas, no electricity. The people are being annihilated in complete darkness. We've been fighting for 9 months on the street, but we can't do it alone. We need our allies and our outside communities to speak up on our behalf. We united together in the 80s when our people were starving, and we need to do it together again. The people have no food, no water, no aid. They've completely blocked access to the region, and the government of Ethiopia and Eritrea have weaponized hunger and rape as a means to further their own political agenda. We need to unite together and use our voice to bring an end to this. We've done it for the last 9 months, and we can't let up. Who are we? Who are we? Who are we? What do we want? What do we want? What do we want? What do we want it?
I want justice!
I want justice!
I want peace!
I want peace!
We demand justice!
We demand justice!
We demand peace!
We demand peace!
Weaponized hunger is a crime!
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 Stop the war on Tigray!
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 Ethiopia's guilty of genocide!
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 Day 608. 608 days of genocide inside of what's known as Ethiopia. It's the 4th of July on this side of the pond. We're celebrating independence and a separation from the British Empire. And how apropos for us to use our time today to talk about those who are already psychologically separated themselves from what's known as Ethiopia. but are in fact physically being targeted, attacked, systemic rape, starvation, lack of access to medical care, lack of communication with their families. We're just seeing an implosion all over the country of Ethiopia, not only in Tigray, but also in the Oromo region and other regions throughout the country, of which I believe there are 10 or 11 of them. What I want to do is just say, many are wondering what they can do. You can share this right now. And if you plan on clicking off because it is July 4th and you just wanted to see what we were going to be doing today as we talk about the 4th of July, I want you to know that even in the wake of the world looking at Ukraine, and after 5 months, the world is not even really looking into Ukraine as much as they were. Well, for 608 days, everything that you've heard about Ukraine, the bombing of hospitals, schools, neighborhoods, children, medical facilities, rape, etc., has been happening for 608 days inside of Tigray. What I want to do is say hello to our good friend Ndele from KETOFM. He's been on it from day one, along with many others. We've been covering this, and I know, Ndele, you've been traveling and crisscrossing this entire nation, getting the word out. I'm going to hit him with the trigger alert, and then I'm going to ask you to kind of give us an update and to just say hello. And the trigger alert is this. This is a show that triggers people because you've been at a free think zone. If you're not willing to be exposed to other points of view, tune out now and don't read the comments. You have been warned. Ndele, 608 days. It's unbelievable.
That's true. Good afternoon, Brother Jeff. Thanks for having me, and hello to your audience. And also, of course, this is, like you said, July 4th, which is the right day to speak about to Ethiopia and what's done to Tigray. And this is an Independence Day, so I know what goes in the mind of a lot of Tigrayans at the moment, because like you said, the days being counting. No one expected to be, even in this 600 plus. As you know, if you remember, during the Rwanda genocide, even it was so outraged, even go to 100 days. So it's so unimaginable for the world to sit and look at what's going on in the continent. It's not surprising. Anything that happens in the continent, based on my view, it's been ignored. Not only just with this horrific genocide that takes place in Tigray with its own government, even the outside world, even when we talk about independence today in America, the Europeans who like to conquer Africa, they don't care about the human life. So now they're trying to speak out, and they think they care in a lip service. That's all.
But when you think about this, Ndele, with the lip service, etc., do you think it would be 608 days of genocide if these were European nations?
I cannot specifically point the finger to them, but it has some connotation into it too.
They would end it.
Yes, of course.
There would not be 608 days of genocide, and I'm just wondering, when we think about the continent and we think about this whole Black Lives Matter movement that kicked off in these United States of America on this side of the pond, and there was a loud voice, cross-generational, cross-race, etc. Shouldn't that extend to Black Lives Matter across the globe?
I agree with that. Because that's the discontent, which is the Western world media has been given a fake news for the past 50 years regarding to what's going on in the continent. So that connection has been cut off to the Western world, especially with African Americans and others. But I don't want to go there. That's a huge topic. But like I said, the reason I'm coming about, because look at what happened in the Ukraine. In Ukraine, within the Russia invaded Ukraine, within 23 days, the international community just gathered together and has cut off everything they manageable to Russia, including bank systems, just like what the Ethiopian government did to Tigray regional government for no reason.
I think you should underscore that.
Yeah.
Because when people think about how the Western world has cut off Russia and has used every means of deterrence, whether it's military aid, technology, advisement, freezing of accounts, even of individuals. I'm talking about the oligarchs inside of Russia.
That's right.
Those who had wealth, or those who have wealth. They are being held accountable for the actions of their government.
It's true.
Like
even though they have a connection with
their own resources are being frozen simply because their connection with their own government, which, I mean, it seems like a far reach, but it also makes a statement that we don't care about anything other than what's happening in this relationship between Russia and Ukraine. And even if you are attached to Russia as a citizen, we will freeze and garner your assets. We will take your yachts. We will, disassociate and do all those different things. The exact same things that, the Western world is claiming against Russia are the same things that are happening against the people of Tigray, the Tigray.
So that's the notion that we need to focus on. So if the international community is focused on that, in that outrage to Russia, when the government, Ethiopia, go after its own citizen, and
Jesse,
Tigray,
make sure we're in focus.
Yes, I think in focus. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah. It goes after its own citizen in Tigray region. The same way the rest of the population of Ethiopia has not even outraged about it, because as we all know, before the war or the invasion by Ethiopian government started, it creates a notion that with anything happens that the government of Ethiopia does not like, will do a finger pointing to a Tigray region political leaders to blackmail them, or even just to paint a notion that they are the whole problem that occurs in Ethiopia. But at the same time, the government of Ethiopia was not even stable at that moment. Even Abiy just took over power, so it just, within a short period of time decision, it also brings the neighboring country, as you know. Well,
I can tell you, we are sharing with the entire world. We are the voice of the voiceless, and we have been making sure this message goes out, regardless to if there are those outlets that don't think it matters. It's not important. There are bigger things to focus on. I'm letting you know, systemic rape, starvation, displacement, refugee camps being swollen, citizens being gunned down, lack of access to medication, a total blockade, and the denial of the aid that would come being denied. We're going to continue speaking about those outrages, those atrocities that are rooted in a government attacking its own citizens.
That's a big point.
This is horrible. And when we talk about, again, the Western world and what these European powers can or can't do, what I want to highlight is everything that they said they couldn't do when we were talking about this for 500 days. Everything that the world said that they couldn't do, or they needed to have a hearing, they needed to get some more evidence, they needed to do some fact finding, they needed to talk to foreign governments, they needed to go and, look around. Everything they said that they couldn't do, they did immediately in Ukraine, which highlights that, yes, you can do what you want. It's just, do you have the will to do it? And with that being said, in Delhi, I want to go back to, for those who are following this, I want to go back to those early days of this genocide and bring some individuals up to date, because in Delhi, if you recall, when we were covering this on day one, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed was denying that Eritrean troops were inside of Tigray or in Ethiopia in general. So this is treason in and of itself, to have a foreign government and their military inside of your sovereign nation attacking your citizens. That says everything about the leadership you need to know of Ethiopia. And the sad part about it is there are those even inside of Ethiopia that justify it. Like, that's horrible. Like, there's never a reason for someone to say there's a foreign government inside of our country attacking our citizens, but the hatred is so intense that they would cheer and even dance and celebrate the death of their own citizens by a foreign government. And that is not even talking about the local government. And then you add on a local militia. It speaks volumes to the leadership, and it speaks volumes to the lack of humanity, and even the darkness of heart of the leadership at that of the country. I have to underscore that because the prime minister was lying at the beginning. Like and it was okay for individuals to say, I believe my prime minister, so it's not happening, even though that I know now deeper they didn't care. But at least they had the excuse. They said, well, my prime minister says it's not, so I'm going to go ahead and agree with my prime minister. And then the prime minister had to shift gears and say, yeah, well, actually it is happening.
That's right. Because the planning was there, but and also, as you know, when he started the invasion was started it even logically that he thinks that the world is not going to take any care about it. He did it on the eve of the U.S. election night. So during that time is also the administration of the United States was in the office, was not even care about Africa anyway. So they did all the calculation, but Abiy made a huge fool out of himself. It's not that the first time. Even though the Tigray leadership and the Tigray and the TDF took over Mekelle, even he still denied. So it's not a surprising, but the notion is that there should be consequences to it because he's the prime minister of Ethiopia. And according to Ethiopian constitution, it should be they should evaluate his decision to go and even to invite the return, even not if he denied inviting, and also publicly that he denied that the Eritreans existence, troops existence in Ethiopia territory. But afterwards, when he got caught, of course, there's a lot of evidence. There's a solid, there's so many technical evidence into it. And then when he admitted, he even said that he cannot even tell them to leave. I mean, so that shows you that he has no any serious leadership consequences, but at the same time, whatever they have done to Tigray population in the way of this invasion, there should be also consequences to his leadership, but at the same time to the Eritrean government.
Well, let's just think about this. You free thinkers out there, and those of you who are watching throughout the world, go ahead and share this. There's someone in your network that doesn't know a genocide is taking place in Tigray. Where's Tigray? North of Ethiopia, south of Eritrea, east of the Sudan, and in the hearts of the Tigray people throughout the diaspora. The message needs to be shared, and if you're wondering what you can do, go ahead and share this. The early days in Delhi, you and I, Mickey Tigray, there's the Tigray Media House, Omni Tigray, Danny Prima. I mean, so many, everybody. I'm just saying everybody. And I would leave folks out, if we began to make a whole list.
That's true.
But from day one, there have been protests. There have been rallies. There have been pleas to various governments around the world, etc. And there was this counter saying that we were somehow not telling the truth. And I'll never forget, people would come up to me and they would try to educate me about what was happening. And I would constantly say, I don't need to hear your excuse because there's no excuse for rape to me. I don't want to hear the conversation about why someone is being raped. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear why anybody is being starved in the 21st century. I don't want to hear the reason for that. I don't want to hear why hospitals are being destroyed and holy sites are being decimated. Like, why are you attempting to explain why that's taking place as opposed to using your voice to say, this is a shame, this is an outrage, and we're better than this. And we as a country, and I'm talking about Ethiopia, where blacks throughout the diaspora have always looked forward to as a beacon of freedom and hope. Now we're looking and saying, well, that's not necessarily true. There is so much hatred that rape, displacement, starvation, and all of those different elements that are taking place are somehow okay because it applies to certain people.
Yeah, Brother Jeff, I totally understand that exactly. For some folks, probably they may be vague to them when there's no communication, there's no food access, there's humanitarian access. When we tell them, especially when they know Ethiopia in the back in the days on the 80s, there's so many horrible humanitarian issue it was occur, but this one is totally different. This was man-made, especially with the central government of Ethiopia deliberately using food as a weapon, using even just normal communications, transportations, bank systems, all that public service any citizen should have in his own country. They deliberately cut it off because, of course, most of Ethiopians' human services or any other services that occur is managed by the government of Ethiopia. So there's a system that they can just, if they don't want you, they can just cut the internet off. If they don't want to talk to you, they can do anything, and especially in the rural areas. And then on top of that, Ethiopia is a huge country, so transportation, it may take you 2-3 days to transfer place to places, even if you have irregular road transportations. So that's difficult. And then can you imagine a Tigrayan mom or a Tigrayan kids or any other that needs medical attention? You can see the picture if you don't have power or if you don't have any kind of doctor to communicate with other specialists and what have you. So that's okay though, but at the same time, even when they invaded Tigray, they deliberately destroy. I'm talking about deliberately. This is international crime, which means deliberately destroying a civilian infrastructure. That's as a military, and you know that it's not a military target, and that faced international war crime. So that's what we come up with the leadership of Ethiopia. He's not only, the prime minister is not only lying that there are no Eritrean troops, that's what he said, but also ordering those military to go undertake this military offense to a Tigrayan, its own citizen. They deliberately, of course, even their own general admitted publicly saying that. So we can go on and on and on with that atrocity, but
we've got to continue to highlight this reality in Delhi, because there are individuals that don't know. The world's attention moved to Ukraine, and now, as Dr. Martin Luther King said, it was something like the public has like a 1 week memory or something like that, 2 weeks or whatever, and then it moves on. Mm-hmm. And now folks are not even talking about Ukraine 5 months later. They're like, oh yeah, there's something going on in Ukraine. And the as we celebrate the 4th of July, there are not individuals who even know that, what was taking place in Afghanistan was the United States of America's longest ongoing war. Mm-hmm. Like, there's so many different things that folks pay attention to or don't have to pay attention to. But how can you not pay attention to systemic rape? How can you not pay attention to starvation? Can you at least share this and at least use your voice or your influence in some way, shape, or form? And many of you have, but we're going to continue to be the voice of the voiceless, because it is 608 days. I know the president of the United States at that time, his name was President Bill Clinton. He said one of his greatest regrets was not really acting in a way that was appropriate as it related to Rwanda.
Rwanda
That was
genocide.
100 days.
It's true.
So now you're at 608 days, and you have like some will talk about different leadership, but 608 days, it's outrageous.
It's true.
It's simply outrageous. And so I want to talk I want to go into a couple of other dynamics that we learned early on. Do you remember Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, when we first was covering this, he was saying, oh, well, this is only going to take about a week. We'll knock this out real quick. And as a matter of fact, we'll run up into Mekelle. We liberated them. The Tigray are cheering because now they are free. That was clear propaganda. And as a matter of fact, they had imposed and put in Tigray leader
to surrender.
and was leading the Tigray government, and he resigned. He's like, no, I'm not gonna do this. I see what I'm seeing, and I'm not going to stand here and allow this to take place, even if I was put into this position by the prime minister. You remember the resignation and the taking and the retaking of Mekelle.
That's true. That was quite surprising to the world, especially when Abiy was thought it was with all those mass movements, that's with his supporters, with Eritreans, Emirates, and others. Even the local Ethiopians ethnic group, which is neighbors Ethiopia, they all just went to after Tigray, but their mission did not accomplished the way they planned it. So they were quite surprised. Even the TDF took over of Mekelle. So that was quite of shocking to them, and especially for Abiy. So now they wanted to see if there's a way to continue to have the leadership in Tigray when he would have some of the points, and it was elected by him to to go administer the Tigray region, but that also did not work. Like you said,
it didn't work. The people of Tigray had elected their leadership, because remember, this kicked off because Tigray had an election.
That's true. Even during the COVID.
During COVID, the Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, who was selected, he was never elected, postponed the election because of COVID. However, the Constitution talked about, the purview of elections. Tigray held their election in terms of their particular government, and Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed attacked and then made a whole bunch of excuses and reasons for, which leads us to where we're at today. Another thing that stands out in Delhi, I'm just kind of going on this 4th of July.
Just to remind people
remind us what we have covered in the past. And then also for those who are celebrating freedom today, does your celebration extend to those who are experiencing genocide? Like, even if it's in another part of the world, can you understand the importance of having your rights infringed upon, your rights denied, your humanity discounted? And here in the United States of America, those early patriots, if you will, said that they were not going to tolerate that. And they struck a blow for freedom. And that's what they are celebrating right now in these United States of America. So for those who are shocked that there would be those who would fight for their freedom and their independence based on rape, based on starvation, based on resources that are being withheld from the federal government to sustain, a particular region, etc., it shouldn't come as a surprise as it relates to how people will survive and respond. Yeah. Ethiopia is known as a very religious place.
Sure.
Around 50% Christian, 50% Muslim, or others. Like, it's, really when people think about Ethiopia, they think very, very in terms of religion. Well, we also covered where Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed arrested, put on house arrest, the head of the Christian religion, Abu Mathis. And there was a white guy who had to sneak in a cell phone to record the Abu, and he was saying, I hadn't been silenced. My voice and my words have not been able to get out of the country. And I've been my ability to communicate has been limited based on Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and this government. Remember that?
That's true. I remember that. I think there's a gentleman named Dennis. He's based in Washington, D.C. I'm sorry, in Chicago. He was the person that put out the Abuna's message, which is simple phone messages. This is ahead of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. Should happen, even have a well outlet media should present his view that just an average person that put out with a simple phone. His message was also very important, not just for Ethiopia but the world. So that shows you how the Ethiopian government blocks not only just in Tigray but is even locally in any surrounding of Ethiopia region. Abiy is also has his outlet of specific medias to block any kind of notion, anything kind of conversation that gives a negative to his leadership regarding the Tigrayans. So those who are speaking out, they will face arrest too. Include right, even in the current, like we are speaking at the moment, there's more than 15. Some of the journalists, maybe I may not agree with their point of views or whatever they said, but it's just because of they are coming after based on what he has done, and Ethiopian troops, especially the Ethiopian troops, what they done in Tigray region and other part of region. So they criticize it now at the moment. So he incarcerates so many journalists, or some of them the bloggers. That shows you not even he doesn't even care if it's Abune or anybody if they criticize what he has done. The international community also criticized, including international outlet medias. So he's just like he's just the same way we call it here Donald Trump, but he's just in Ethiopia that. Anyone who speaks out. So the general public, which is in Ethiopia, if anything happens in Tigray, they will paint it as, oh, that's just an acceptable things to happen. Because this is war, it's okay, this war can happen and women can be raped or, this and this and that. So they make it just an excuse not to see the suffering of the Tigrayan people in the way of the negligence of the way the Ethiopian government has done. They should not even use a military invasion for whatever reason. They say they started with law and order. I mean, how can you use the entire military system in a 10 million people population, which is in Tigray region, to solve the problem? I mean, this is just an outrage. That's why the international community was telling the Ethiopian government that you make the bad mistake or that this is decision, so you have to reverse it. You have to sit and talk and around discussion. But after all this 600 days, this is what the current situation is, which is they wanted to negotiate. Even the Abiy government is not, the Tigrayan leadership was asking it previously, but now the Abiy government is begging for international community to sit for him to discuss with Tigrayan leadership.
Well, let's talk about how tough the Tagaru spirit is in terms of the ability to resist oppression. Mm-hmm. Now, just think about this, everyone out there. You've got a small group of individuals that are in a region that has been siphoned off from resources, etc. Mm-hmm. These are the individuals that were fundamental in terms of freeing what's known as Ethiopia from, the grips of fascism. Like, these are the individuals that didn't have weapons, but they trained with sticks, and then they would fight the enemy, and the next thing you know, their weapon would be in the hand of the Tagaru, and that's how they built their military armament. There wasn't a shipping in or a support of. And so when you think about what took place now, Abiy Ahmed used the federal government, used the Amhara militia, used Eritrean troops, and
Somalian troops at 30,000 to be estimate. neighboring Somalia, not the Ethiopian Somalia region, but the Somali neighboring country as well.
And those fighters, the TDF was able to still fight its way all the way from the north, all the way to the front door of Finfini, aka Addis Ababa. How tough is the spirit of the Tagaru fighters? How strong is the will, and do you ever see them giving up the fight when they've never given up a fight?
Sure, and that shows you the history. I mean, some of them that they wanted to talk about. This is not the first time. They also previously. I don't know if you remember during Mengistu time. They underestimate them. They were like they were like some kind of guerrilla fighters. They cannot even come to the central government in Addis Ababa, and 17 years later they marched to Addis Ababa. Everybody was shocked, including the Derg military, and they vanish. So this is not the first time. And so even though even Abiy was speaking on the national TV in Ethiopia, same thing, like they're going to be vanished. They're not going to be be a threat. And then like 4 weeks later they took over Mekelle, and they are challenging him right now. So Brother Jeff, I'm glad that you talk about the history in the back in the day before we were even born, but even we exist, and now they still creating that history. I mean, with the military, Ethiopian military is so-called, they're supposed to protect the country. Not only they think they can protect from any outside invasion, but they've been ambushed, or they've been win by a local one region of Tigray. Even like they're 10 million population. So that shows you how their braveness. It's not just because the number. It's just the willingness of the heart and the willingness of the people to achieve the same goal at the same time. So that shows you the heart and the heartbeat and the will of the Tigray people.
The spirit,
it speaks one word.
The spirit of freedom. Like, this is what July 4th is all about. The freedom of resistance, the freedom of, self-determination, the spirit of, humanity. And so those of you who are looking at July 4th today, we are talking about what's taking place in Tigray right now, 608 days on this side of the pond. I mean, every genocide has its signature, and this signature of this particular genocide is on the body of women. Talk about the systemic rape and why I mean, those of you who are talking about Roe versus Wade right now, and you should, in terms of reproductive rights and also having the power to determine what goes on with one's body, I want you to know that when you have a genocide that is based on rape, it's hard to talk about women's rights when women's rights are not stood up for around the world. And here's a perfect example where rape is the signature of this genocide. Everyone that's on the side of, women's rights should have their voice in this fight right now, wouldn't you say?
That's true. I think, Brother Jeff, and also the situation that occurred, and then with the humanitarian assistance, with international involvement, this is also should not be an excuse for any kind of that disaster took place in Tigray, because as you know, they were saying, we just opened this for the humanitarian, so and so and so. That should not even be a negotiation. It should be even currently with Ukraine and Russia, they're still in war, but they still exchange humanitarian or any POWs and what have you. But in when it comes to the contest, even Tigray is not even a sovereign country. It's of course it's still an Ethiopian constitution, it's still Ethiopian territory. But like you said, we need to see that the days goes by, and the humanitarian should be not a question. It's not a negotiation things to happen, but this has to be an immediate involvement with international community. But at the same time, it is all Ethiopians' responsibility for the suffering or the human assistance in Tigray. But that didn't happen.
Well, with that being said, everybody that's watching, 608 days ago, I had a totally different view of what Ethiopia is and represents. 608 days ago, it was totally different. And I spent considerable time inside of what's known as Ethiopia. And I didn't even know what I was looking at until 608 days ago. I never knew why certain folks didn't really talk to certain folks. Like even here in the diaspora, you can see, and I'm free thinkers out there. If you don't like, now you have to understand the dynamic of when you force individuals together and call them one thing when they have never been one thing. There are over 80 different ethnic groups compressed into what you're calling Ethiopia. And there has never been a time where they have been a united collective. And so you can force an empire onto individuals and force them into an identity through power, military might, etc. But a person's identity, their ethnic traditions and their own sense of being, if it resonates with them beyond colonization, because 608 days ago, I never really thought of Ethiopia as an empire.
Yeah.
When in fact, all Ethiopia as you know it today is a simple empire, and you're seeing it implode. And so when you start talking about the history of Ethiopia, as I started looking into it 608 days ago a little differently, then I'm able to understand why there are those in the comments that would be from a particular cultural outlook and would deny a genocide and would say it's not happening. And Brother Jeff is a paid propagandist. And Ndele is a paid propagandist. If you look real close, it's only a certain group that have the same outlook that say those things. And I would have never understood it 608 days ago. And so as you look through and you go through those comments and you see who's dancing when folks are starving, who's clapping when individuals are being raped. And here's another piece in Delhi that stands out so much in my mind. We even saw individuals being burned to death.
We saw so many.
Like, individuals are being burned to death while individuals who call themselves Ethiopians look at their fellow Ethiopians being burned to death would tell you that those are not the same people.
And at the same time, that's just horrific to happen. And then when they claim Ethiopia is like a welcoming, a loving place, and anybody who comes, they are welcome, blah, blah. But when it comes to their own citizens, just because they're affiliated to a certain ethnic group, or if they are from certain part of Ethiopia, or if they believe in certain political view, someone who happen to have an upper hand because of locally they may have a backup from a local Ethiopian troops or militias, anybody who have arms, and they can go and attack a certain citizen, happen to be weak, doesn't have no to defend themselves. It could be an average citizen. So they take advantage of that just because that person can reflect a threat to them because his origin maybe can be from Oromo, Tigray, or other part of Ethiopia. So, and then at the same time that you said, the content, like you were hearing, even I speak the language, I understand them very well. But those people who speaks negatively they trying to categorize, the Tigray issue and like some like political, like can be, they blame it even the TPLF, the one who blocked the road for the food not even to go to Tigray. I mean, but at the beginning, 4 years ago, in the Amara region, they blocked the road themselves. And now they some of the group that in Amara region, my friends call them like the Proud Boys of Ethiopia. And some of them, they name them like Fano, whatever their name is. These groups also claim to be, they go a goodwill for the Amara people, but they still have a negative attacking to the Tigrayan people by claiming, saying, oh, TPLF did that. But even to make peace, you need to make sure you know your neighbor's cause and sympathize about their suffering, and then come up in the conclusion. But if you're just gonna ignite the thing, even purposely, even doing the genocide yourself, That's another way of continuing the suffering of the Tigray people. But at the same time, the central government is looking the other way because that's their mission, what they were at the beginning. And for you, like you referring, for those who are denying, like you said, of course, yeah, they deny because that's what they do. They don't want to be caught. But now, right now, most of them are regretting is what happened in Tigray. Some of them, they're trying to acknowledge it in the closed door, but at the same time they're afraid to say it out to a public. But some of them now is still criticizing they used to support the Prime Minister of Ethiopia in his leadership all the way even the war front in Tigray, but now they're speaking out against him. As we speak, some of them, there's still protests all over the United States, all over the world, but that's too late. As far as I'm concerned, when, like you said, we've been sitting here talking for 608 days. 8 days. Our brothers and sisters in Tigray have been massacred, looted. Purposely their saving has been confiscated with the Ethiopian government. They cannot pay their employees. Some of them, they cannot work. They cannot pay their rent in Tigray because of that. Because
let's break this down even further. And if you're watching, it's July 4th. We're talking independence, and we're also talking the spirit of independence as it relates to genocide inside of Tigray. We're the voice of the voiceless. We will continue to shed light on this tragic blight on humanity right now. There's no reason for anyone to be starving to death. And I could tell you, even if you go back to Ireland and they talked about the potato famine, that was no famine. There were potatoes all over the dock. They were denying food to individuals as a war measure.
That's right.
When we were raising money, talking about we are the world and all of those different dynamics where the world was coming together to stop folks from being starved, those folks were being starved systemically. Yes, there was a natural component to that as it relates to weather, but there was a political component as well that was denying individuals the right to have the food that was being shipped in or saved. And so inside of what we call Ethiopia, there has always been this dynamic of genocide, hostilities, hatred. And 608 days ago, I wouldn't have known that. However, right now, there are individuals who are starving inside of Tigray, and it's not because of lack of access. It's not because of lack of food. It's lack of access in delivering the food to individuals who are starving.
That's true. And then those starving occur because of the Ethiopian government, of the central government launch on an unnecessary war during COVID, but it's postponed its election during COVID. And then which one is important? He postponed the election during COVID, but he launched a war on his own citizen because there's some breaking law that he mentioned, the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, and then they launched a war during COVID. And then during COVID, they block everything imaginable to the citizen of Ethiopia, which is they are also Tigrayans. They block, just even a running water, electricity, telecommunication, ground, air, and transportation. So how can you're gonna do a law an order enforcement when you are cutting off all kind of human services to citizen of your people?
Well, I could tell
as
you,
they speak to you, like
that is the height of inhumanity. And when we're talking about leadership, it looks like those who were supporting Abiy Ahmed as prime minister and were even on board as it relates to the genocide. And when I say genocide, here's what I want you all to think about as well. Either you're supporting genocide or you're not. I don't want to hear the arguments about what is, what ain't. Either you're a supporter of genocide or you're not. There isn't even a middle ground. We should always say no to rape. We should always say no to starvation, no to the murder of civilians, kids, displacement, refugee camps, all of those different things. And I guarantee you, if you look at the comments, there was a group of individuals that used to call and try to convince me, and then they started calling names and all those different things. They don't try to put up those arguments anymore because they know I've got some questions for them. They won't engage anymore because they know I'm going to ask the basic question: do you support genocide or not? Are women being raped or not? And when you say they're not, when even your prime minister says they are, then it's hard for you to be standing on firm ground. It's July 4th. Don't forget, we're powered by the people. We want to say thank you to all of our patrons that make this possible. And then also those of you who go to brotherjeff.com and make donations of any amount. And then there's the great Leanne Wheeler's favorite option. It's Cash App, $JEFFFARD. We are powered by the people. We are the voice of the voiceless, and we will continue to bring you content such as this. In Delhi, bodies being washed up in the Tigray River. Like, can you imagine being at a river and bodies start showing up in the river? This is also a reality that we have covered.
That's true. Brother Jeff, that was at the beginning of the war. But now the things shifted differently now because they get caught that time, because they tied them, and some of them they were just thrown into the river, alive. But in this group, when they were caught, now they systemically just apprehend them or assassinate them in the cliff. We have seen so many horrible things, but at this still, like you said, like they brought the question to you and to me, to others, and they still denying. I don't know what they in their world is genocide to them. I don't know. I mean, you read them the technical term of genocide.
Genocide is basically when you target an individual because of something that they have no control over.
That's true.
Their ethnicity, their religion. There's something about them, and there are individuals throughout Ethiopia, and I've talked to many, that can just be in a particular area, like say Finfini, but some call it Addis Ababa, that will be arrested simply because of their ethnic identity.
That's true. So when these things happen, and if their loved one is not touched, or is not their loved one, if they're not ethnic group is not being attacked by the central government of Ethiopia, that's okay. And then when you ask them, they give you those kind of excuse, because of their they'll mention to you their political affiliation, like, it's because they're TPLF, they're junta, blah blah, and they do not see it doesn't matter even if they do that, at least they have a dignity as a Tigrayans. Or as a citizen, they should be respected, and then process based on doing of the law. But that did not happen. So at the same time, now, Brother Jeff, I don't know if I'm correctly, but like you said, those people they're not asking you anymore.
No, because they know that I've got more information. I've had to look at this thing from a different perspective of 608 days ago when Roger asked the question, why is this happening? There are surface answers and there are deeper answers, and one of the deeper answers is, Roger, that Ethiopia is an empire and you're seeing it unravel. You're seeing all empires fall apart. And so if you think you can hold an empire together by force, by might, by anything other than a collective effort toward a common good, you're going to see the unraveling of relationships. And Roger, this has been an area of intense hatred for a very long time. I don't know if you've ever been amongst folks that simply hate you because of who you are, but if you've been black in America, you absolutely know that dynamic, that there are individuals that just simply hate. And there are individuals in what we would from the outside consider a collective Ethiopia, all of black folks that are all the same and they are all united. They have never been the same. They have never been united. Many have had their rights trampled upon. They have subclasses, and they've had slavery, and they've had some that think they're better than others, and they call each other different names. And there's a whole bunch of names that you will hear if you could speak the language or you can hear the language. Not only will you hear the words, but you'll hear what's in someone's heart. And many have just been raised to believe that they're better than others. Some are, it's horrible. And what you're seeing is the unraveling of an empire that is crumbling. You have some individuals that have benefited from the empire, so they play the role. They play the good. Just like here in this country, like folks say it's all good because they're making it.
That's right.
But most of the folks are not making it. And for 608 days, you've got leadership that has taken this economy and has invested in drones, war, debt, already in a country that was dependent on foreign aid. What's going on with the economy of Ethiopia? And if the social fabric of Ethiopia is deteriorating, what's happening with the economy of Ethiopia?
As you know, the economy, of course, we're talking about the African continent. It's always fragile. It's always depend on international donors. But at the same time, some countries' interest, like China, Russia, Turk, and others' involvement, some countries happen to make, local economy to be even possibly better than before, but that's just it's not a guarantee. When it comes to the Ethiopian content, the past 35 years, there was enormous of economic change, even though the Ethiopia still have leadership, still have a struggle because of the power change and what have you. And then in the meantime, the international community was also swapping back and forth. As you know, the Westerns are given some kind of tangible, and then if you have some kind of consequences or what have you, there is a string attached to it when they make a donor. Some countries like China and others, they involve and they kind of look at the humanitarian crisis and the other way, and they still involve in some of structure building and what have you. So that's the same. There's nothing new to Ethiopia because Ethiopia is still in the continent. Having said so, Ethiopia does not have its own resources to generate the economy at the moment. Even they have resources, they still not like other countries utilize that and to use the economy. It still depends on an international donor, even for last 50 years. So when you have a war with its own people, not only a war with neighboring, like Ethiopia had war with Somalia, Eritrea, and what have you, so that hurts the economy. But right now, the war is within itself.
It's a civil war.
Civil war. So the people cannot generate a wealth because they are engaged, the Tigrayans are being attacked, but the other part of Ethiopians are attacking its own citizen, so-called with the Ethiopian troops and what have you, militia. So as you know, so there will be no economy generation. There's no education time. There's no kind of Ethiopia is not like a industrial country. It's just a farming. So almost 95% of the population lives on farms. So if you pass the season of the farming season time, so you'll face hardship of economy, not only just for your family, but as a whole, as a country. So Ethiopian economy, even going to war, it is always was fragile with Abiy leadership. Now is also the international community is also uphold some of the donors, including United States and European, and then United States also even booted out Ethiopia from AGOA, which is it's like a trade that was benefited to the sub-Saharan countries, and Ethiopia was one of the benefiter. But now Biden administration has stopped that benefit to the Ethiopians. So that shows how the Abiy leadership is not focusing in terms of the livelihood of the Ethiopian people, but he's focused on in how to grip his leadership to stay in power. But anyone who comes on his power, that he will use anything. That's what exactly they use to the Tigrayan, because the Tigrayan population of leadership don't want to have any kind of a central ruling in Ethiopia. So they want everybody to live peacefully, but has to administrate its own region based on the current constitution of Ethiopia.
Well, I could tell you it's been 608 days. We just thought we would stop by on this July 4th and share with you the spirit of independence, freedom, etc. 608 days of systemic rape, no access to, fresh water, health care, food, etc. I mean, we could go on and on. The human, the atrocities continue to mount. And then there are still those who will say that this is propaganda, when in fact, let me just tell you how hatred really works. Everything we were telling you that's taking place in Tigray is the same thing that is taking place in Ukraine right now. However, as it related to Tigray and the black folks in Africa and all of these dynamics is we need to investigate. We don't really know what's going on. But did you notice the technology of the ability to see what was exactly taking place in Ukraine? They were telling you how much blood was being transmitted in trains. They were showing you satellite imagery and all of the technology without any hearings, without anybody having to tell them what's going on. And so now, even today, you have hateful black folks that will continue to act like we are in the 19th, 18th century and need to have a word of mouth as it relates to the piling up of dead bodies, the destruction of property, the movement of troops. Like someone on the ground needs to tell you that in 2020, you could probably pull it up as a citizen with Google Earth.
Yep.
And so you still have individuals that will tell you that it's not happening. This is propaganda. And the worst part about it, these are intelligent, learned individuals who are probably in the diaspora for the very reasons that are taking place right now. Ask any Ethiopian that you meet, why are they in the diaspora? And I will tell you it's because of a historical hatred. The greatest export of Ethiopia is African people. It ain't coffee. It ain't roses. The greatest export out of Ethiopia is Ethiopian people. They're all through the diaspora, and it's because at some point there was genocide, starvation, displacement, folks coming out of refugee camps, folks trying to get away as opposed to trying to stay. And that is just a historical narrative. So a lot of these individuals who are telling you what's not taking place, they have been raised in the diaspora. They've been raised in the United States of America. They got doctorates. They've got degrees. They've got great jobs. They send money back. But at the same time, they still carry that seed of hatred that will not have them stand up against genocide because it's taking place against someone or someone's they hate.
That's true. That hate is also is not just they've been brainwashed with it, but their parents, their grandparents create that. But I don't want to go back to that history. But
we have to, because the good news in Delhi is this. There's a new generation of people in the diaspora. Mm-hmm. They are not connected to the historical hate. As a matter of fact, they have learned what their parents have learned in the diaspora, and particularly United States of America. America don't care where you came from. Once you get off that plane, you black. They ain't pulled you aside and said, are you Tagaru? Are you Oromo? Are you Nigerian? Are you South African? Are you Kenyan? Are you Tanzanian? You're just one black person, and you're subjected to everything black folks are subjected to in the United States of America. And ask any of these individuals that escaped or got away from Ethiopia, ask them what their children are, and their children will tell you, I'm black.
That's true.
You might be Ethiopian, you might be something else, but now it's beautiful because the Tagaru community is raising their children to embrace who they are.
And that's the difference I'd like to touch up. I'm very fascinated. As you know, I've been traveling all over the United States to cover my sisters and brothers from Tagaru community. And I see the difference because, of course, I am attached to it and I learned the language and I grew up here, as you know. And when I see the young people, how their reaction to the current situation, I mean, these young people, like, it seems like they just came from Tigray yesterday, but they were born here.
And they have a sense of pride because the Tagaru have taken back their ethnic culture identity, and they have separated psychologically from the empire. I did a workshop with some young students. They were 9th grade, and a young lady stood up to me and she said, yes, I know what that is, and I'm Tagaru. I'm a Tagarawati.
Yeah.
Like young people from the U.S. understanding and loving who they are is the greatest gift Abiy Ahmed has given to the Tagaru community, because there was a time where most of the individuals just identified as Ethiopian.
Yeah.
They was just garden variety Ethiopian, and everything that Ethiopians achieved in the world, you had a certain group that would take the credit for them, while at the same time not letting Brother Jeff and others know that they hate them individuals that won the gold medal. They hate the individuals that achieved high, scholarship. They hate those individuals, but they always accepted them in terms of the larger story of those are Ethiopians, and they gobble up their political strength and their political might, and they talk to these folks and say, yeah, we're all Ethiopians, but the wink wink is we hate these individuals.
That's true.
Now you've got a whole generation of young people that have never been to Tigray, but they're the proudest Tagaru folks you'd ever meet anywhere.
Yeah, and then I'll add to that, because I think that's also, I'd just like to give a credit to their parents or whoever raised them, because just because Abi said that, like, those kids cannot be overnight to be like Tagaru, but these kids has already know, because they've been mentored by their own loved ones and families, and but the flourish of being as one Tagaru and to come up with this very huge mass of love to the Tigrayan. It of course the current situation had it, but those Tigrayan's family have a huge accomplishment or responsibility to raise their children that way, to at least to feel they belong to something, that they're proud of it. But as a whole Ethiopian, because and that includes me, because I grew up in the way, your family who brought you here, keeping you intact with where you come from, that's the detachment that what our brothers, African Americans and others, have faced in the generation, because of the attachments between the loved ones in Africa and here.
Well, I can tell you now that you've got individuals who love the fact that they're Tagaru. If you don't believe me, anybody go up to someone who's Tagaru and call them Ethiopia, or call them an Ethiopian, and I guarantee you 100% of them will say, I ain't Ethiopian, I'm Tagaru. I was Ethiopian up until the fact that my prime minister allowed a foreign government to come in and attack me, and I'm talking about Eritrea. I was Ethiopian before genocide, to the extent to where my prime minister allowed women and girls and even grandmothers to be raped. I was Ethiopian until the starvation. I was Ethiopian until the hospitals were blown up. I was Ethiopian until they disconnected me from my family and communications, my wealth and banking. I was Ethiopian all the way up until this genocide, and now go up to them right now and call them Ethiopian, and you might have to you might have to run for cover.
That's
and
right.
So with that being said, it's July 4th. We just wanted to touch base and continue to let you know that we're the voice of the voiceless. You just go ahead and share this with someone who may not know. I understand that there might be some good news, or perhaps a ray of opportunity. Is there a truce? Are humanitarian goods being able to flow into Tigray? Because Justy, I believe it was UNICEF, there was a report. There's a report that talks about something taking place. Justy, can you give us that update? And then I want to talk about it with Ndele.
Yes, sir. So just for those who don't know, the Ethiopian government has issued a treaty. Yeah, a treaty. They now have a humanitarian truce with the TPLF,
Or the TDF? Or the TPLF,
No,
the government.
the
Yes.
government.
Go ahead.
with the government, around getting aid to some of the places that were previously inaccessible. This started, and granted, how I know about this information is from the American state government and not from the Ethiopian state government. But the Office of the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, goes in to talk about the truce beginning on March 24th of 2022. And it is indefinite. There is no time frame associated with it.
Well, I could tell you that's I don't know. What do you think about that news in Delhi? Do you have any recent updates to share with us? I know that there has been an international protest. You were just in Vegas. I just saw something in Denver yesterday, and of course there have been in Washington D.C. every day for 608 days. What are your thoughts around the truce, and then also what other updates do you have for us as we prepare to complete this conversation?
Well, based on the situation, the current situation, some of them are official, some of them just behind the scene. Of course, the humanitarian assistance should be delivered with no any hunger with anyone, but it would not be surprising to hear from the international donors community and providers that they're getting a weight that they start getting to deliver, but that's not still enough as we speak. As you know, they're still complaining fuel shortage, some cash shortage because of the manpower they have for the delivering the trucks and others. So the Ethiopian, and then they're still pointing the fingers that obstacle is to the Ethiopian government. So it's still not happening because, as you know, there's no bank system, there's no communications, what have you. Sometimes there's a security issue, so so you will have to have a communication to make sure all the donors donations or what have you should be smoothly be delivered to whatever the region that they're trying to deliver to, especially in Tigray. And also, as you know, this affects neighboring regions in Afar and Amara region as well. So with current situation, it's still the humanitarian is not as of spoken or as needed, but it needs to be at least as you know, if you remember, the United Nations has said at least 100 trucks a day should be delivered, but according to what is being delivered, what the U.S. government officially is saying, still is not enough. All the blockade has to be open. Humanitarian assistance has to be floating, be ground, air, in any way has to be without any Ethiopian government interference. It's still the U.S. government is still criticizing the Ethiopian government. I know the USAID was criticizing the current blockade, even if they said they will cooperate, but it's still the Ethiopian government using his authority or his troops for blocking for the neighboring from Afar region, including the Amara region, which is borders with the Tigray. There's no any kind of change. It's still that the Western Tigray, as you know, is still being hostile to the Tigrayan people. So the U.S. government insists, or even said to Abiy government, that Western Tigray has to be free from any kind of, including the Eritreans. So that land has to be vacant from any hostile to Tigrayan people. But as you know, that's not happening. The new development, also the central government said that, but the Tigrayan leadership has spoken out. They're willing for continue to negotiate with Ethiopian governments and to see if there's any lasting peace to come, but at the same time they will not negotiate because of every inch of their Tigray land has been occupied with Ethiopian troops or Eritreans or any other ethnic groups that neighbors Tigray. So they want them to leave, and then the negotiation will continue. But at the same time, the humanitarian assistance should not be on the table to negotiate. That's different. That the humanitarian assistance has to be continued without this. There should be a wait for a negotiation. If you do this, and we will give you 100 trucks. So if we do this, the humanitarian assistance, the international communities also agree. That's why now some of the flow of the humanitarian assistance kind of increased in order for the Tigray leadership also have an ultimatum for them to discuss with Ethiopian central government.
I could tell you one of the things that's important is that, independent investigation into genocide should take place immediately. And Abiy Ahmed should be held and sent right to the International Criminal Court And if not for any other reason, but for allowing a foreign government inside of a sovereign nation and those citizens being attacked in partnership with his leadership, which is called treason. And so the denial of human rights, all of the things that are inside of the Ethiopian constitution, even though that there will be those that are in these comments that will say, well, Brother Jeff, we don't follow the constitution because we don't like it. Like, that's not the process. But anyway, you don't have to like it, but you need to follow it until something is changed. However, you're
don't be obstacle to the change.
Exactly. What you're seeing is the implosion and the collapse of an empire. And with that being said, maybe I should end with a lesson that folks kind of get a little nervous about, but I will say it anyway. First and foremost, I'm 1,000% disgusted with the African Union.
Oh, yeah.
Because when anybody says African solutions for African problems, and you've got these neo-colonialists sitting up there representing European powers inside of a African Union that's built by the Chinese, while in the very same region of what they call Ethiopia, which is actually Finny, sitting there not being able to figure out that a genocide is taking place right up under your black African noses. Each and every one of you leaders are about as disgusting as anything that I've ever seen. You're neo-colonialists. Folks look up to you, and you are nothing but a hindrance to your people. I'm saying stop the genocide in Tigray. And when you have leadership that looks like you in conjunction with foreign powers that benefit from all of the resources of your land, but your people are starving, I would just say there's nothing more disgusting than that. With that being said, the implosion of Ethiopia, we only talked about Tigray today, but there's also Oromia in the Oromo. This same pattern has been taking place with the Oromo community, the Oromia, and Oromo. The Oromo are also being subjected, as well as many others throughout the country. Any updates? You've been following what's happening with the Oromo?
Thank you so much. That's what exactly the warning was given to Abiy. And I mean, if you start something when it have do in Tigray, and also even the Tigray previous leadership in the military, they even warned this war. If you launch a war in Tigray and it's not going to stop, it's going to have any implications into the rest of Ethiopia. And this is exactly what's going on currently with Oromo. Even some of the horrific things comes out in Tigray region in the past. That's the same thing that happening into a region in Oromo, and also in Afar and in Benshangul, and also including in the aggression of an Amara region. So that shows you how the Abiy administration is so weak and has its leadership and calculated that if the Tigray leadership vanish, that his peacefully leadership will continue, but did not work that way. So now even so, I remember when he got a peace prize in the world, they were claiming, he was a first Oromo leader. I mean, the Oromo right now is facing hardship, even and under his leadership. Even he does not even claim to be the Ethiopia is under Oromo leadership. But everything now, the Oromo people still have facing the same compared to genocide in Tigray in some part of the region of Oromo. But at the same time, the other connotation is there is a border spill of conflict between Oromo and Amara and others, and that's even as the current situation that face the Oromo people or the Amara and the Afar. So the Tigray's leadership are saying right now that's why they wanted to have the central government to admit to have a peaceful negotiation with Tigray, so they can resolve the rest of Ethiopian problem.
Can there be any peace? Like this civil war, this implosion, this unraveling of the empire, you've had the Muslim and the Christian unity for, a long period of time. And then all of a sudden, even during Ramadan, you started seeing Muslims being attacked and shot. And is this is this all orchestrated to create the chaos that would allow widespread, mayhem? Is it orchestrated by Abiy Ahmed? Because everywhere you look, there's a fire, there's smoke, there's discontent, and it seems to be unceasing. And let me add on to that as well. Even those who were supporting Abiy Ahmed in the genocide against, the Tigray and also the Oromo, now they are discontent with Abiy Ahmed, and now he's armed like groups like Fano, and now they're taking those arms, and now they don't like Abiy Ahmed.
Yeah, for those of us who really follow the Ethiopian situation, it is every day there's something new, things comes up. It's very complicated, but at the same time it's so greedy to what they do. Like in the Abiy missions, I think right now is he doesn't know how to grip, because there's no any specific place, that peaceful region in Ethiopia, that at least there is some way of conflict. There's a humanitarian crisis, like in Somalia region of Ethiopia. I know there's huge amount populations and starvation. This is not only just because of the war, but that's nature made, I believe. But at the same time, when you go up on the border with the Tigray and Amara region, Afar, that's also what he created, and the consequences of all those humanitarian disaster is a bad decision and his own leadership. But at the same time, the rest of the Amhara and the other groups follow, and they all went after Tigray, and then that consequences backfire on them. Now they said, oh, Amara places they've been raped, or there's Afar and been raped, and blah blah. They're trying the same thing tactic that was being used in Tigray. What they trying to do to harm the Tigrayan people. They use all kind, not only just a military strategy, but they use humanitarian blockade, and they raped. They use all kind of destroy their most of the structure that were in Tigray. That's the same thing. Word they use to justify what's going on in Amara region and Afar region, just like what you just mentioned, like Afano and others. They're like the Proud Boys of Ethiopia.
Well, I could tell you,
I'm just to refer to that. But in the meantime,
that's right. But in Delhi, let me just say this, and I want folks to think about this, who may be wondering what's going on in what's known as Ethiopia. I'm going to give you guys some cheat sheets, because I didn't think about this 608 days ago, but there's been a genocide for 608 days. And we have to say, stop the genocide. You're watching the implosion and the unraveling of an empire. Ethiopia is an empire in concert with European powers since the scramble of Africa. Mm-hmm. And if you don't believe it, ask anybody if they've heard of a land called Oromia. And if you haven't heard of Oromia as a land, as a people, as a grouping, then it's going to be hard for you to understand that there is an empire, because now Ethiopia is also in possession of Oromo, in the Oromo land. And there are the Oromo who understand that. And then there are some that have assimilated into that, but it doesn't discount the fact that you have people that are colonizing people, and they look like one another, but they are very different from one another. And so if in fact Ethiopia is going to survive, which it probably will not in this current iteration, you have to look at a historical footnote. Mm-hmm. And that's when Mussolini came into Ethiopia and occupied Ethiopia in conjunction with the British and the French. And the only reason Mussolini was taken out is because Mussolini joined the wrong side. He jumped on the side of Hitler. The German, yeah. And he came in and he became a part of, that German aggression. And sadly, Germany lost. And I'm just saying that's a good thing. However, I want you to look at who Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has aligned himself with. And you can follow it at the UN Security Council, etc. Ethiopia has lined up with Russia. and they have voted to support Russia in the UN, etc. And all of you who are clapping for Abiy Ahmed, you better hope that Russia wins, because the Western world has joined in unity against Russia. And I guarantee you, if you're not looking with Abiy Ahmed partnering with Russia and China, then you don't know which direction you're looking at, and you just better hope your leader is on the side of the winning team, which in fact he will not be. And if he is not, then you're going to see the same way Italy's colonies were divided up and given to Britain and became protectorates and all. Like, that's just a historical footnote. Y'all look at it.
That's true, but at the same time, what you mentioned on the Africans and Ethiopia, it's not Ethiopia's only. Even Russia endorsed it even for the invasion of Russia, and then the rest of, like you just talked about, African Union, the majority of African countries, they look the other way. What's Russia? Because you know why? Because that's what they do. Like in Cameroon, Rwanda, and other places,
anywhere,
even in Africa,
those leaders are just as trash as any other. That will allow their people to be exploited, raped, their resources taken. I keep telling folks, Africa is not poor. Africans are poor. And that's because their leaders take all of those resources and they get themselves a big driveway for $1 million, and they put that money up over here, and they could care less. I'm talking about their own people. I'm talking about the ones that are a part of their own ethnic identity. Them African leaders don't care nothing about them. They care about having, respect and admiration in the king's top and tails and all of those different things. And it's very sad. Yeah. It's very sad. And until we as a people figure it out, if Black Lives Matter is not going to matter to Black lives, it sure ain't going to matter to white lives. We got to figure it out.
So the same way, that's why we say that Tigray Life Matter. Hopefully, this matter will set inside, and the history will print it in the big ball that will be the history learned. But at the same time, the struggle continues as we speak. Most of the important part, like we said, as you know, the humanitarian assistance should be no hindering, but the Tigrayan people are still suffering because of the lack of any basic necessary of assistance. So without further said,
you've been traveling around the country and covering this everywhere. Aren't you super proud of the Tagaru and those who have raised their voices from day one and continue just as strong 608 days later?
That's a kind of surprising. It's like that's a blood boiling things to me. What I say? I mean, it's just the population is so small, but their message is powerful. But the response is also gradually just back to them, which means, not like, as you know, the Ethiopian is 110 million population. Only the Tigrayans spoke out for the Tigray suffering. The rest of Ethiopians, maybe 90 million or whatever, even just like you said, they say, oh, this is fake news. There was no genocide in Tigray. There's nothing. They don't even come with their brothers and sisters of Tigray to voice for the voiceless. The Tagaru consists for the past plus 600 plus days. They've been voicing all over the world. They put that message in the front news of any outlet that you can imagine. But at the same time, in an election, like even in the United States, Congress and Senate, even the Biden administration. So even if the population is not that much, but their voice being heard, but the action is taken slowly, surely. But I still admire and respect what they have done, because if they did not speak out, none of the other Ethiopians that they claim they say they are Ethiopians, including with their own brothers and sisters in Tigray, they never say anything.
Well,
but right now, let me finish to you. But even right now, the current situation, even the other regional part of Afar, Oromo, and Amara region, they say there's genocide taking place in their own territory. And then guess what? I just happened to come into protest the other day, but they never came to the Tagaru for their own brothers, which is they consider themselves Ethiopians, but they never outspoke what's going on. even right now, they admit, yeah, Abiy did to Tigray people. They admit, but back in the days, like when you said, they were saying, no, they're in the genocide. So they need to apologize to the Tigray people. At least that's my point of view. They need to say sorry, but Abiy misled us or something. They can come up with kind of phony excuse. I don't care what they said, but at least they should respect to the Tagaro and say apologize, at least to make it a positive for the future, peaceful, so the Tigray people and other part of Ethiopia and neighboring Tigray to live peacefully in the future. But if this animosity is continue and blaming on TPLF and the other one blaming Fano did this and if they Afar did it and the Eritreans did, that thing's the cycle of destroying the people. It continue. That's what exactly Abiy wants, so he can stay in power.
Well,
so and the same thing Isaias as well.
Abiy Ahmed will not stay in power. There's no way you can govern over a house that is so divided and unraveling every single day. And if it's allowed to continue, it's a shame, because the good people of Ethiopia deserve better. Regardless of who you are, your ethnic identity, and how you are, you deserve better. And there's also hope that at some point humanity will be able to rise above its hate and its hatred for one another for whatever reasons. It's been 608 days of genocide. I want to just say that I want to say thank you to everyone that's been raising their voice, regardless of who you are, where you are.
One of the person commented to me, responded to them if it's possible. If you had 1 minute.
Okay. And before you address that, I really just want to say, you know what? There have been people of all backgrounds. Some people have been at great risk to stand up and say, you know what, they're against this genocide. The consequences are very high, particularly when you're in a highly charged, hateful environment. And so some individuals are silent just because the cost is too high. But then there are also individuals that speak up, and they pay a high cost for using their voice. This, to me, is beyond politics. It's beyond ethnicity. It's beyond everything. I want you to make sure that it's a humanitarian reason for you to see the humanity in individuals and say rape, starvation, lack of access to health care, displacement. All of that is what we stand against. And I'm not going to get drawn into the politics of it. I'm going to just say that it's wrong, and we're going to speak up against it. And those who speak up against it, thank you so much for your voice and being the voice of the voiceless, because genocide is never a good thing. Ndele, the final words for you.
Thank you so much. And we are so grateful for those who were listening to us and watch us, and they gave some kind of very current statements and comments, what have you, and I appreciate that. And I'm seeing some comments. We don't have to be very, we don't, because if they're a hater, we don't have to be a hater, and that's what I believe. And just because I'm my calling brothers and sisters, and I see all of humanity that way. But if they disrespect me because of my ethnic and my origin, because of Tigray or what have you, I don't have time for that. But at the same time, I don't want to create myself as a hater, because I would be even better to express and then to help my people even better, so we can be instead of we follow on their footsteps. So it's better to waste my time for the better of for my people, for Tigrayans. That's why I refer brothers and sisters to all of them in that content. But I will not forget what they have done and what they have did to my people in the past 600 days. And so it's not a way to forgive, but at least I will never forget it. But at the same time, I'll burn my time to do a better for my people at the same time. So
well, thank you so much, Ndele, for keeping
that's
up
how
on
I
this.
see it.
You've been doing it 608 days.
Yes, and then the other things, and I do still acknowledge the Tagaro and diaspora. They have done so much. I seen them in my eyes, and I have documented them, and they still. I mean, they went through the challenging time. As you know, COVID was a challenging time. Some of them drove, some of them flew, some of them, came walk. You can just imagine. Some of them were they would have no work to go because of COVID. So it was very challenging to support families and what have you, and the young people locally, even United States or in Europe and others. And I still really I don't know what to put on, because the Tagaro have fought just like the TDF did, and they're still doing it, but they're determination did not go in a drain. So I see a lot of achievement at that peak. Hopefully this horrible atrocity that took place by Ethiopian government and its ally on Tigray specifically should be on the end of this 2022. Hopefully at least me and you also, and our brother and sister, hopefully we'll sit in Tigray and we'll cherish this with the Tigrayan people in the future. And this is my hope. But at the same time, just because those haters say things to our we should not be haters at the same time, but we should just move on and at least prosper our own people only to the better good of for the Tigray future.
Well,
and then I admire the young people, and also I love them, and I just wanted to pass that, Brother Jeff. And thank you for what you do as well.
I appreciate it. And it's the 4th of July, and there are those who are celebrating independence, and then there are those who are talking about independence. But it's been 608 days of systemic rape, starvation, lack of access to medical attention, to your own finances, communication with your family, friends, and loved ones. We've covered faith leaders that have been locked up in a country based on faith. We've seen individuals that have been burned to death in the 21st century, bodies washed up in the Takazi River. We've read the documents of women having foreign objects put inside of their private parts. Some of the most incredible atrocities known are taking place. We've seen a foreign government inside of a sovereign nation in partnership with a prime minister that folks seem to applaud these different forms of leadership. And I'm telling you, if you look real close, Ethiopia under the leadership of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed is in partnership with Russia and China and etc. And I think that he's on the wrong side of this particular issue. However, whatever you all do, genocide is never a good thing. I'm going to leave you with these words, and they're simply Tigray Tisser.
Have been raped by Eritrean and Ethiopian military men because of the ongoing genocide. Out of the 6 million population of the Tigray region, 5.2 of them are facing a man-made famine. This is all because the dictator in Ethiopia wants to stay in power illegally and unconstitutionally. We, as a global citizens, have the power to come together and stop the suffering of the innocent people. We're here calling on the U.S. government to impose targeted economic sanctions on Ethiopia and Eritrea, to impose arms embargo so that these genocidal forces do not continue to buy armaments and kill innocent people. You can join our social media movement by using the hashtag Tigray Genocide on Twitter. You can also join our grassroots movement and lobbying efforts by talking to your senators and Congress people and pushing them to impose sanctions on Ethiopia and Eritrea. Sanction Ethiopia! Sanction Ethiopia! Sanction Ethiopia!
Sanction Ethiopia!
Sanction Ethiopia!
Sanction Ethiopia!
Yes to the ICC!
Yes to the ICC!
Yes to the ICC!
Yes to the ICC!
Drop food, not bombs!
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 If I can't hear you, they can't hear you. Who are we? Who are we? Who are we? Do we want Eritrea to bomb, rape, murder, massacre, and annihilate the Tagaru people. Of the 6 million innocent civilians in Tigray, over 90% of the population is in need of emergency humanitarian aid. There's no food, no water, no gas, no electricity. The people are being annihilated in complete darkness. We've been fighting for 9 months on the street, but we can't do it alone. We need our allies and our outside communities to speak up on our behalf. We united together in the 80s when our people were starving, and we need to do it together again. The people have no food, no water, no aid. They've completely blocked access to the region, and the government of Ethiopia and Eritrea have weaponized hunger and rape as a means to further their own political agenda. We need to unite together and use our voice to bring an end to this. We've done it for the last 9 months, and we can't let up. Who are we? Who are we? Who are we?